This is our mini lecture on public goods, and we'll talk a little bit about externalities in our next mini lecture. When we talk about public versus private goods, we're talking about goods that are consumed in fundamentally different ways. Public goods are consumed by, well, society as a whole. Private goods are consumed just by generally one person or one firm. The problem is, sometimes people have incentives to consume public goods in ways that aren't good for society. Public goods are defined by having two main characteristics. One, public goods are non-excludable. That means you can't prevent somebody else from using the good. Could just be very costly, or it could be impossible. For example, I can prevent you from driving my car. My car is excludable. If I put this video on YouTube, the video is non-excludable because anybody with the link can find it. They're also non-rival. That means that when one person uses the public good, somebody else can still use it. Goods that are rival in consumption get used up. Lots of government services are public goods, and public goods are often goods that create positive externalities. We'll talk about externalities a little bit in the externalities mini lecture, but for now you can just think of them as effects that spill over to other people. So if a good is rival in consumption and excludable, we call that a private good. Rival in consumption means that one person using it can prevent another person from enjoying it, and excludable means that you're allowed to keep somebody else from using it as well. So most goods are going to be examples here. For example, the PowerPoint earlier used the example of pizza. If you're eating a slice of pizza, we can't both at the same time eat the same slice. I'm going to eat a little bit more than you are, or you're going to eat a little bit more than I will. Yeah, right. And so it gets used up. It's also excludable. If I go up to you and I try to eat your pizza, you can tell me to stop. One example of a private good is using a mask. That is, right now, a lot of people are buying those N95 masks to prevent spreading viruses. Those are private goods, even though they create a positive externality for other people. Because you, using your mask, prevents somebody else from also wearing the mask. Only one person can wear the mask at the same time, even though it creates a benefit for both people. And it's excludable. If I ask for your mask, you can tell me no. Goods that are non-rival and non-excludable are called public goods. Now, it's very common to get public goods confused with common resources. So keep in mind, go back to this definition, non-rival, non-excludable. Two good examples of public goods are PBS, and if you live on this island, you know lighthouses. Very popular here. PBS, Sesame Street. That is absolutely a public good. You watching PBS doesn't use up PBS for other people, and it's non-excludable. It's on a public channel. I know Sesame Street is on HBO now, but they still run it on PBS 9 months later. PBS is intentionally a network that is always going to be available to everybody, so it's non-excludable. Other radio signals would kick in with this as well. Goods that are excludable but non-rival, we call those club goods. Sometimes you'll hear the term artificially scarce goods as well. Club goods are a really, really easy way to make money. So examples here would be live streams and like Sirius XM radio that you have to pay for. Non-rival in consumption means that one person using this doesn't use up all of the resources from another person. I know you might be thinking that if too many people log into a live stream, the quality starts to degrade, and that's true. But just think about your next one person. Wi-Fi fits in on this as well. They're excludable, but providing the good to another person doesn't really add much in terms of cost. So you can make a lot of money just providing access to these goods. Finally, goods that are rival in consumption and non-excludable are called common resources. We'll see a classic example of this on the next slide, but think about parking lots and think about clean air here as common resources. These are goods that are rival in consumption. If you want to use up a space in a parking lot, you can, and nobody can park in that same spot unless you're riding a motorcycle. They are non-excludable, though. If you, we're talking obviously about a public parking lot here. If you have a private parking lot, it is excludable, and a spot becomes a private good. But if we're talking about a public parking lot here, it's hard to prevent somebody from getting to a particular spot. That's why some people might have what they think of as their own spot, but it doesn't always work out that way, and they can get irritated when somebody parks there, but they have no way to defend it. Common resources are really interesting. You've probably heard the term the tragedy of the commons. So this comes from an article in the magazine Science that tracked the Caribbean animal known as the queen conch. It's or conch, depending on who you listen to as far as pronunciation goes. It's a shellfish, right? Those big kind of twirly horns that you think of as seashells, those are conch shells. There was an ecologist, Garrett Hardin, who said that they were being over-harvested, and if you over-harvest them in the long run, they're going to go extinct. So economists talked about ways of making them excludable. Fishing licenses, harvest limits, shorter fishing seasons. The US, we just banned it. The thing about common resources is that it's individually rational to overconsume these goods. Think about when somebody's giving away free food. It's, even though you know that it's going to get used up, it's rational for you to eat as much food as you want. However, that means the food's going to get used up. So consuming common resources harms society as a whole. This is one of the most difficult things to get your mind around. Think about what we're looking at now in terms of virus infection. There are a lot of people who really should be staying at home because they've been exposed to the virus, but who are still going out shopping or hanging out in public, right? Also think about the dreaded office coffee pot. It's always the job of the last person who takes the last cup of coffee to refill the pot to make a new pot of coffee. But they never do. You can't prevent somebody from using the office coffee pot, but the coffee does get used up. Office coffee is a common resource, and when there's no office coffee, it's a tragedy, man. We also create free rider problems here. When we talk about a public good, a free rider is somebody who wants to use the good, but doesn't want to pay. Is anybody taking notes for the class and sharing them in a Google Doc? Why not? Are you afraid people would use them but not help you? The government usually is the one that pays for these public goods. They will levy taxes, but some goods that are public goods, radio, city parks, they'll be provided with a mixture of fees for some purposes. Think also of people who donate to the opera or actually give money to PBS during the pledge drives. Right. So folks, whatever questions you have, please feel free to reach out. The Externalities mini lecture will be up soon.